Should the Baltimore Ravens trade for Terry McLaurin? We talk about that and more next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostraker of Ravens Wire. Of course, we're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. We're free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And we're back. Another Ravens week here, talking Ravens football as training camp continues to creep closer and closer. And for this team, a lot of tough decisions coming, but good tough decisions when it comes to cut down day because of all the depth that they have. So in the first segment, we'll talk a bit about training camp, just how important it is, some of the decisions they might have to make positionally just based off of what they have done this offseason. All good things to have. I don't want to say that these guys are going to have to make terrible, horrifying decisions, but there's some talent that might not make the roster because of just how much they have of it. So we'll talk about that in the first segment. But in the second segment, we're going to be talking Terry McLaurin. I know we've done the should the Ravens sign X, should the Ravens trade for X for a bit of Mondays here. We kind of moved away from it a bit, but I was getting to thinking, and we've talked about DK Metcalf and about Deebo Samuel, but another really intriguing name that I know some people would not be mad at in a Ravens uniform is Terry McLaurin, the Washington Commanders wide receiver. So we'll talk about it. The Ravens should trade for him, what he brings to the table, and everything relating to that in the second segment. Then in the final segment, we'll dive a bit into positional previews, pre-training camp, and kind of, I guess, heading into training camp. We'll do this every Monday for the next 4 Mondays. So it'll be, again, like pre-training camp into the very beginning of it. And so here today, we'll talk about quarterbacks, running backs with fullback included in that, and wide receiver. Then the second show will be on tight ends, interior offensive linemen, exterior offensive linemen. Then the third show will be defensive linemen, inside linebackers, outside linebackers. And finally, the final installment of the series will be corners, safeties, and specialists. So today will be quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. So a jam-packed episode to talk about today. And if you haven't checked out our episode from Friday with Kadri Ismail, very, very touching episode. We talked about Jalen Ferguson and Tony Siragusa. Q obviously played with Tony for 3 years in Baltimore. They won the Super Bowl together there, Baltimore's first championship for the Ravens. So he shared a bunch of really, really great stories of Tony Siragusa. And also we talked about Jalen Ferguson as well and what he brought to the table. So if you want to check out that episode, I highly do recommend it. It's just, again, celebrating the lives and remembering the lives of those two men. So well, here today, though, we'll dive into Ravens content, of course, as we do. But if you are here with us in audio form, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to follow us anywhere you get your podcasts. If you're here with us in video form on YouTube, thank you so much. Our next goal, 2,000 subscribers. We're about 25-ish away right now, getting really close. I'm really excited. So if you've subscribed, thank you. If you haven't and you're thinking about it, we put out Daily Ravens content 5 days a week. So be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn notifications on as well and like the video. So follow me on Twitter as well at CashRecord34 and the Locked On Ravens account at Locked On Ravens. But let's now talk about the importance of training camp because we're coming up on it. Obviously, we still have a lot of weeks to go, and we also found out some dates. We found out very important dates for the Ravens in terms of training camp. The dates to remember, according to a tweet by Jameson Hensley, July 19th, the rookies report to training camp. July 26th, veteran players report to training camp. August 11th is the first preseason game, that opener against Tennessee. And then September 11th, the season opener, where the Ravens will travel to the Meadowlands to play the Jets. So Ravens training camp will include 16 free and open practices at the Under Armour Performance Center. That is about 1,000 fans per day. Actually, not about, it's approximately 1,000 fans per day. You have the first full team practice July 27th. You have fireworks night at M&T Bank Stadium on July 30th at 7 p.m. And the final training camp practice will be on August 17th. So yeah, we got some details. Again, it's getting closer. Football season is getting closer here. And it's exciting also because they're also going to have the post-practice autograph session for children ages 6 to 14 returning. The food trucks, interactive children activities will be available. This is all great. Obviously past couple of years, there haven't been the opportunity to do as many of those types of things. But now, as we're again getting back a couple years later here, we're starting to see some of those things return. So it's very exciting to see all that happen. But there's going to be a lot to look for, whether you are attending in person, whether you're just tuning in and tuning along for everything that's going on. Baltimore, this training camp is a pivotal one because of how much depth they have. And I feel personally, I don't know if everybody feels this way, but I personally feel a lot more confident in the Ravens in their depth than I did last year. Now, I'm not saying the Ravens didn't have good depth last year, because they did, and then the injury bug it went crazy. That's a simple way of putting it. The injury bug went crazy. But at the same time, this year, Baltimore clearly saw what happened last year, right? We all saw what happened last year. The injuries out of control. And so what Baltimore did was they attacked positions of need, but they didn't just sign one player or two players and say, all right, well, we'll, undrafted guy here, we'll risk it there. No, corner signed a ton of different guys in terms of letting guys go, first of all, but then bringing in Kyle Fuller, drafting two guys there. Still, maybe if they wanted to add a veteran, they could. I don't really see them going that route, but they could. Safety, a position where they lost to Sean Elliott. They were kind of plugging and playing some guys there as well. Signing Marcus Williams, drafting Kyle Hamilton, bringing back Tony Jefferson. You have the wide receiver position, which is one that's still kind of a need right now, but it was weird with the wide receiver position because it wasn't a need heading into the offseason, and then it became a need. And now, in terms of just they need, I think personally, a veteran guy. But running back is a prime example of this, where you lose J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, and you bring in guys like Mike Davis and Tyler Beatty and other guys too, alongside getting these players back. And that's another key thing here. It's just when these guys are going to return. We've seen Lamar Jackson at mini camp. We saw a couple other guys returning from that. Marlon Humphrey, obviously, some of those less serious season-ending injuries that were suffered later in the year, but the ACL injuries, the Achilles injuries, all those different types of guys. Key training camp dates potentially for them to come back. Will they see any work in training camp? Will they not be able to, but then still be ready for week one? Will they ease people in? What's going to happen with the reps there? It's another big thing with the reps, because for every practice that Dobbins or Edwards or Ronnie Stanley or Marcus Peters doesn't practice for, it's opportunities for another guy to move up a spot on that depth chart, move up however many, 2 spots, whatever. They had the opportunity to go out there and perform, show the coaches and the staff and everybody that, hey, you know what? They deserve snaps. They deserve playing time. They deserve a roster spot. And in terms of the preseason, we'll talk about this. And this won't be the last time we have this conversation either. But in terms of the preseason, will they play? Won't they play? I would not be shocked if the Ravens just sit their veterans all 3 games and not risk what did happen, ultimately, unfortunately, to J.K. Dobbins. Also, L.J. Fort suffered an injury in the preseason. And part of the reason that you're looking at some of these teams now, the Ravens obviously didn't do this, but other teams last year and for the last couple of seasons just haven't been playing their starters. They've taken the safe route and probably feel like, these veterans have played. They've been around the block before. They understand how to play the game. They don't need some tune-up in the preseason. We'll get that for them in week 1, week 2, and whatnot. So preseason is important, but if the Ravens decide to go the route of, all right, we're working with the young guys now, wouldn't shock me, wouldn't surprise me. And honestly, I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. So training camp for the Ravens will also determine who makes and who doesn't make this roster. Obviously, it's not the only factor that goes into it. Preseason, very big, and obviously previous track record, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, if you have a strong training camp, you're putting yourself in the conversation, at least. And that is some of the most important thing that you can do, or at least one of the most important things that you can do here. And for potentially guys on the offensive line, let's say, where the Ravens, again, attacked the tackle position, a position that was one of the Ravens' biggest weaknesses in 2021. They have Juwan James coming back now. They brought in Morgan Moses, Daniel Falele. They have Patrick McCary there as well. Obviously, Ronnie Stanley, the big piece. But at the same time, how many tackles do you keep? How many interior guys do you keep? The left guard competition is one where one of those guys might not be on the roster come opening day. Ben Powers, potentially. I know that's been the popular pick for a cut/trade candidate from there. So again, the good problems that Baltimore has right now is they have very talented players, and it's not a situation where they really only have like 40 guys to feel confident in making the roster, then a bunch of other guys they're unsure about. You can put together a 53-man roster of guys that you're confident in if you're the Ravens, especially I think with what we're going to see in training camp in the preseason. That's one of the best problems you can have. You don't like to part with talent, but at the same time, you only have 53 roster spots. You can add, the amount you can to the practice squad. You can try to keep guys that way, but if a Ben Powers got cut, Ardarius Washington, Geno Stone, some of those like last guys, Kristen Welch, guys who could potentially be on/off the roster. You don't really know right now. Those guys probably won't make it to the practice squad, right? So you have to determine, like a Ben Bredesen situation, a Greg Matt situation. Can you get draft capital back so that a team that potentially wants that player doesn't have to wait through the waiver process and risk that guy going somewhere else? It is certainly possible. We could see that route happen once or twice. I think it's very smart by Eric DeCosta to do that and the Ravens organization to do that. So, yeah, I'm excited for training camp. I'm excited to see these guys compete with each other. A lot of really cool positional battles we'll dive into throughout the course of these next couple of weeks, heading into training camp, throughout training camp as well. So again, football, it's getting closer. It's getting closer to being in the air, and I'm very excited to continue breaking this down, definitely. But we still have a ton to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. In the second part of the show, we'll be talking about Terry McLaurin and if the Ravens should trade for him and everything relating to that situation. So be sure to stay tuned. Again, still a ton to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. First, though, I do want to tell you a bit about BetOnline. And betonline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs, which are now over. The Avalanche winning the Stanley Cup championship. There you have Major League Baseball as well. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. And betonline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and also golf. So head to the website today, use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're back here. Our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still here with you. And thank you for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. Again, we're so close to 2,000 subscribers. So be sure to subscribe to this channel, like this video, share it if you do enjoy the content, and also be sure to follow us along in audio form and be sure to turn notifications on there. But let's talk about Terry McLaurin a little bit. Now, the Ravens, again, a veteran wide receiver definitely wouldn't hurt things in my opinion, but if the Ravens want to take that swing for the fences, which I know there are certainly people on that train right now saying, bring in DK Metcalf, bring in Deebo Samuel. The next person in line there seems to be Terry McLaurin, someone who wants a new contract, and it's going to be a big one. McLaurin has lit the league on fire over his first 3 years in the NFL. His played in a total of 46 games, has 222 receptions, 3,090 yards, and 16 touchdowns. He's a guy that has had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. His rookie year in 2019, the only season he didn't do that, and that year he had 919 yards, coming off a 77-catch, 1,053, yard season with 5 touchdowns in there. And he's a player uber talented, was part of that very talented 2019 draft class, which obviously the first receiver taken in that class was Marquise Brown, the now former Ravens wide receiver. In my rankings that year, A.J. Brown 1, DK Metcalf 2, N'Keal Harry 3, that was bad, Marquise Brown 4, and then I had Terry McLaurin at 5. So a lot of really talented pieces there, and McLaurin is somebody who, again, you're looking at all the big contracts that are coming for those guys. A.J. Brown gets traded from Tennessee to Philadelphia. Marquise Brown gets traded from Baltimore to Arizona. DK Metcalf, currently with his contract situation, what's going on there? You also have a guy like N'Keal Harry that obviously he's probably not getting that contract. But again, those aren't even all the guys. So McLaurin, somebody who's going to get a big deal. The Ravens, should they invest in that in terms of 1, draft capital, 2, contract? I'm not so sure it all makes sense in that situation, but the player that he is, there is no doubt in my mind that he would, 1, instantly become the number 1 wide receiver in Baltimore, but 2, just add a different dynamic, as most of these star guys would. Lamar Jackson, obviously, compared to some of his counterparts, right? Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, etc., hasn't had that star top 10, top 5 wide receiver that you can say, all right, this is the number 1 guy, and he's a number 1 guy in this league, top 10 talent wise in terms of that position. He just hasn't had it. Marquise Brown, I've said consistently, a very high end, like top 3 wide receiver 2 in my eyes. Very talented player. The Ravens offense gets worse because he's not there, in my opinion, but you still, I think they have talent there with Rashad Bateman, but a star added in there in Terry McLaurin would just open up so many things. He ran a 4.35 40. He's someone who has the speed, but also just because he is a 6-foot receiver around 210 pounds, people kind of, I don't know, people like look at him and they think, oh, he's a smaller guy, can't really go up, make those catches. He can. He doesn't have a 6'2 body, a 6'3 body. He can make contested catches. He's somebody who, in my opinion, has he has size to play on the outside. I mean, people view him. I've seen people say, oh, he should only play in the slot. He should only play in the slot. That's where he's best utilized. I think he can do both if you really want him to. Like, I'm not necessarily putting him only on the outside, only in the slot, but he has a lot of polish in his routes, a very good route runner, something that coming out of Ohio State, he did very well. He breaks very well. He takes very good angles and comes out of those breaks very crisp. He also is somebody who is able to like read the field a little bit. He works back to the quarterback, which is something that I've talked about with veteran receivers, and McLaurin obviously only going into his fourth season. But some of the advantages of having a veteran wide receiver is the fact that these guys can sense trouble. They can work back to the quarterback to help avoid that. Some younger receivers, and look, they all play the position. They all understand how this works. I'm not saying that younger receivers don't do this, but some younger receivers will run their route and then kind of just try to run around the field, getting open and everything. Terry McLaurin helps his quarterback. He gets in the right position. If, let's say this happens, Lamar Jackson will be scrambling around. If he's under pressure, McLaurin will find an open space. He'll find a zone. He'll sit down. He'll run to the sideline. It is very impressive how he's able to help out his quarterback. And also, he's someone who's a very talented one-on-one player. It's very hard to go one-on-one with him. He's someone with his polish as a route runner, with his ability to win those matchups. You have to pick and choose. It was almost like what we were talking about a couple of years ago when, really back in 2019 and also in 2020 a bit before Rashad Bateman came into the fold a little, but it was really who's going to have the big game. Was it Marquise Brown or Mark Andrews? And we saw it was either one would have a huge game and the other would just not be there in terms of stats, or they would both have games, but it wasn't anything to write home about. So in this situation, if the Ravens acquire any star receiver, whether it is a DK Metcalf or Deebo Samuel or Terry McLaurin, it's going to take pressure off of guys like Mark Andrews. It's going to take pressure off of guys like Rashad Bateman. It's also not going to necessarily completely into their snap counts, their targets. It will. Like Terry McLaurin should be a high target player. He's going to earn his targets. He's a player that Lamar Jackson would be looking for early and often throughout his Ravens tenure, however long the pairing would last there between McLaurin and Jackson, depending on the contract situation. It feels like with McLaurin and just what he would want. But that's the key, right? Should the Ravens invest $20 million per season, $25 million per season, $30 million per season in a wide receiver when we know what this offense is? It is a run-first offense. That's not saying they can't throw the ball. That's not saying that, the Ravens can't effectively do that, because I think in an ideal world, we will see a combination of 2019, kind of more skewed towards 2019, but then the beginning-ish half of 2021, where the passing offense, I give it credit, was a lot better than what we saw over those last couple of seasons. So it's an offense that you're not running the ball 50 times a game to win. You can't never throw the ball and win, but it's an offense that has the pass game feed off of the run game feed off of the pass game, and having the best possible wide receivers helps you there. But where do the Ravens find the money? Where does that come out of? What positions? Is it on defense? Is it at the running back position? Do you not pay a J.K. Dobbins or Gus Edwards another deal there? Do you take money off of the cornerback books, the safety books potentially? Where are they finding that money to acquire a player like that? It's tough with the offense the Ravens have. Is it a good investment of resources? I think that, again, doing anything you can to help Lamar Jackson is a good investment of resources, just because you're doing that. You're helping your quarterback. You're helping a star be the best version that he can be, because we know what he can do as a passer. We know what he is as a pocket presence. He's great at doing all that. We also know what he does with his legs. He's a dual threat quarterback where he can throw and run the ball extremely effectively. But if the offense truly is going back to bully ball 2019 full offense, a player like McLaurin might not be utilized properly. He might be a player that is there making $25 million per year, but is he doing enough in the offense? I think the attention he would seek, or the attention he would get from corners, from safeties, shading over the top and whatnot with safeties and everything, it'd be worth it that way. But again, if it comes too much out of your defense in terms of contract money, if it's a 4-year deal worth $100 million or a 5-year deal worth $130, for example, let's drive up that price a little bit for a player like McLaurin, who is certainly going to earn every penny he gets. Like, he's so talented in multiple different areas, as I talked about a bit earlier. But I don't know, these star wide receivers, I definitely would not be mad if the Ravens traded for one of these guys, right? Again, so much positive comes out of that. But my concern becomes, where are the Ravens sacrificing, especially with a new deal for Lamar Jackson coming up? You have Ronnie Stanley under contract for $100 million, Marlon Humphrey under contract for $100 million, Mark Andrews signed to a big deal, now Marcus Williams in that fold as well. Smart GMs, smart franchises can make it work, and the Ravens are a smart franchise. They can maneuver the salary cap, they can manipulate it to how they want, but at the same time, the salary cap does exist. I know the saying is that it doesn't, but in some ways, shapes, or form, you can kind of tiptoe around it and not pay this and push this down the line. But I think for the player that McLaurin is, such a good player, such a phenomenal receiver in this league. He's proven that time and time again. But not only the contract, but the draft capital. Would the Ravens part with a first-round pick? Would the Ravens part with a first and a fourth or multiple seconds or something of that nature to add on to the contract? I think that personally, when weighing all of that, the sacrifices asset-wise, positional-wise, personnel-wise for a player like McLaurin, maybe the Ravens, again, I don't want this to be the recycle thing where it's like, all right, they're going to sign this veteran every year. It's going to be the same thing over and over again. But they have talent, they have talent. Rashad Bateman and Tylan Wallace, Devin Duvernay. I think the better cost-efficient route, not just now, but for the future, to help surround Lamar Jackson with the talent that he needs, both on offense and his defense, is to maybe look to see what you have, sign a veteran for this year. If it doesn't work out, we're going to see more guys potentially ask for trades. T. Higgins potentially is a player next year. The Ravens can also invest another first-round pick in a wide receiver. There are very talented wideouts coming out. Not saying that, again, McLaurin would be a bad acquisition by them, but when looking at everything, my answer, it's a tough one. I did go back and forth on it, but I will say, should the Ravens trade for Terry McLaurin? My answer at this point in time is no, just because of everything that goes into it. It's the same thing we were talking about with Julio Jones last year. Now, two very different players in McLaurin and Julio Jones, both where they are in their careers, the players they are, etc. But I think the resources, if you can fill that out with Lamar Jackson in the running game, while also, again, prioritizing, continuing to add young weapons around him, I think that you can do that. But also, if the Ravens feel the need to say, hey, you know what, this is the time we're going out to get a veteran-ish, McLaurin fourth-year guy, so not totally like a 33-year-old guy, but if the Ravens want to go out there and say, you know what, we're going to get Lamar Jackson if you're a number one receiver, I will say go do that because he deserves a guy like that. But from a team perspective, when looking at the full picture, I will say for now the answer is no. But again, wouldn't be totally mad if they ended up doing it, just me personally. But that's what we have for the second part of the show. Still a ton to talk about in terms of where the Ravens are positionally. We're going to be diving into the quarterbacks, the running backs, and the wide receivers for Baltimore and where they are before training camp in our final segment. So be sure to stay tuned. Still a ton to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. We're back here. Our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still here with you. And again, thank you so much for making Locked On Ravens your first listen today. I really do appreciate it. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe on YouTube, share it with anybody you want to share it with, whether Ravens fans or not. We're here in video form, but also in audio form. Be sure to follow along with us there. Turn notifications on as well. Let's talk about this team positionally. Quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers with fullbacks sprinkled in as well. We can't forget about the fullbacks. Quarterbacks, there's not a ton to talk about. I mean, Lamar Jackson is the guy. Very important in terms of what he is to the team. The most important piece of what he brings to the team on a week-to-week basis. I kind of sung his praises a little bit in the second segment, but this team, they rise and fall based off of what Lamar Jackson gives them. And we saw that. Tyler Huntley came in. Very good backup. I feel confident with Tyler Huntley as the backup. He's not a guy that I would trust to, again, start 6 games at the end of the season right now. Now, maybe this offseason, this training camp, right, we see a different side of Tyler Huntley. Hopefully improved deep ball accuracy, some improved decision-making there. And then maybe I will say, you know what, if Lamar Jackson misses some time, I can feel confident with Tyler Huntley for an extended amount of time. Now, obviously, hopefully Lamar Jackson does play all 17 games. Huntley's still very talented, but I think there were some definite huge areas that we saw with him that needed to improve. I mean, the deep ball offense for the Ravens just completely just torpedoed into the ground. There was barely anything there. Tyler Huntley's deep ball was a huge weakness. So hopefully improvements there. But for Jackson, again, with a hopefully improved offensive line, we will see a better performance by him than what we saw really from the Miami game on, where the Ravens couldn't handle cover zero. And then again, it was like every play, Lamar Jackson, the tackles were collapsing. He was scrambling for his life. That did lead to some poor decisions by him in terms of throwing when he should have been running when he should have been throwing, interceptions, some fumbles that he should have just thrown the ball out of bounds, holding the ball for too long. So I think with improved offensive tackle play, that will be cleared up a lot. Obviously, I think Lamar Jackson is a good decision maker. I think just the pieces around him in that part were a little underwhelming in terms of helping his decision making. Some of them were his fault, but others weren't, in my opinion. So yeah, the Ravens also in that room have Brett Hundley. There's Tyler Huntley and Brett Hundley. Those two will be competing for number 2. I don't really think it's much of a competition, though. I think that Tyler Huntley will run away with that pretty quickly. So then it's between Hundley and Anthony Brown, the undrafted guy out of Oregon, to compete for the number 3 job. I've been pretty consistent with saying that the Ravens will keep just 2 quarterbacks. That's really, unless something crazy happens, that's where I'm probably going to continue to lean. And then the Ravens can maybe get a guy like Hundley on the practice squad, or Anthony Brown potentially, or maybe even sign another guy. Maybe Trace McSorley becomes available and the legend will return to Baltimore and continue throwing it on a dime in purple and black. So we'll see. But yeah, the quarterback position is one. Lamar Jackson is he's the lifeblood of this team, the lifeblood of that quarterback room. So yeah, not a huge amount to talk about in terms of like what are they getting out of the position. We know what they're going to get. I think it's going to be great, a great year for him with great play. Running back wise though, it's a little bit more murky there, right? You have J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, all coming off of major injuries. We have not seen Dobbins or Edwards participate yet. So the Ravens, as I talked about in the first segment, they go out, they draft Tyler Beatty in the 6th round. They have Mike Davis there as well, Nate McCreary, Ricky Person. They have a lot of talented players there, but it all does hinge on when Dobbins and Edwards will come back. Now, it feels like, again, not a doctor, no inside information, it feels like that J.K. Dobbins is a bit ahead of Gus Edwards in his recovery. Obviously, hopefully both guys are ready for week 1. But if not, I hope the Ravens do take the cautious approach, which I think they are doing. And that's the right decision for them. So with Baltimore at that position, let's say that Dobbins and Edwards aren't ready. They either have to miss a couple games, go on the PUP list. Then it becomes, I think, the Tyler Beatty, Mike Davis committee, where you have Mike Davis, a very solid runner, someone who very powerful, does not skip leg day. If you've seen the picture I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. Does not skip leg day. Someone who, again, strong base, able to break some tackles, good as a receiver as well. And that's a theme. That's a theme I wanted to talk about here. And I've talked about it for the last couple of weeks, even months, actually. Tyler Beatty, very solid receiver out of the backfield, keeps his legs going, breaks tackles, runs through contact, good yards after the catch guy in terms of catching passes out of the backfield. He's a player that, again, I think with the Ravens, seemingly it feels like they want to move to more of an offense that utilizes the running backs out of the backfield as pass catchers. I think we were going to see that a lot more in 2021 before the injuries to J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. They were excited about it. You know, Edwards and Dobbins, they were asked and they talked about it a lot. So I was looking forward to seeing that aspect. So I think they brought in that skill set of guys who can catch the ball out of the backfield, good pass protectors. That's very important. But obviously when rushing the football behind, again, what we hopefully hope is an improved offensive line, it will help them out a ton. And even if Dobbins and Edwards do have to miss a week or 2 or even 6 weeks or however long it is, I feel much more confident, as I said, in their depth now than I did back then last year when it was obviously the Ravens lost everyone in the running back room from 2020. Heading into 2021, they had to sign all these veterans off the street, guys who either were just cut by their former teams like the Saints or hadn't been in the league for a little bit. So it was tough to get all those guys, 1, up to speed, but 2, to rely on them for the full year. I know Latavius Murray got hurt, missed some games. Devonta Freeman, to his credit, didn't perform well earlier in the year, then performed well at the end. Le'Veon Bell just didn't work out. So with Davis, with Beatty, I feel very confident that those guys are in the room if Edwards and Dobbins do have to miss some time. And fullback also, will sprinkle him some fullback. Patrick Ricard, a player who is not just a fullback, is utilized in a lot of different ways, can line up in line, is a guy who they use in motion a ton, and that's a big part of their offense, and I still expect it to be a big part of their offense. So bringing him back was a big get for them. I know not the flashiest signing in the world, but I think all in all, he'll be a very important piece. Ben Mason also there, so you have the insurance now. Assuming he stays, I don't think he'll make the roster or anything, but if he's on the practice squad, I think that's very good Patrick Ricard insurance. Then looking at the wide receivers, a position that, again, I talked about, wasn't really a huge need heading into the offseason. It is now one of their biggest needs, if not their biggest need at this point. Devin Duvernay, James Prochet, 2 third-year guys from that 2020 draft who I think will perform very well. In terms of depth chart, you're looking at Rashad Bateman, number 1, Devin Duvernay, number 2, James Prochet, number 3. Tyler Wallace, number 4. Then you have guys like Benjamin Victor, Jalen Moore have been around the team for a couple of years. Undrafted guys, Shamar Bridges, Mekhi Polk, Devin Williams, a couple others as well. Slade Bolden from Alabama there as well. It felt like, though, the Ravens really looked for a specific profile when the undrafted guys were brought into town. The big-bodied guys, and we've talked about this before. With the Ravens and their receivers right now, they have a skill set, and they were looking for a different skill set. Well, I'd say 2 skill sets. With the loss of Marquise Brown, they could definitely use another speedster. Devin Duvernay is kind of the main in-house pick to fill that role right now. But big-bodied guys, that's someone, a position that we've been talking about for a while in terms of what they need there. Big body is number 1. That's why a guy like Julio Jones fits so well, in my opinion, even if you're only getting 12, 13 games out of him. So Shamar Bridges and Mekhi Polk and Devin Williams, huge guys. Benjamin Victor, a massive target, around 6'5" for him. So that's a player where I think the Ravens keep 5 wide receivers. Oh, and going back, I think they're going to keep 4 running backs, in my opinion, right now, not including fullback. If you include fullback, I think it's 5. But I think it's going to be 5 wide receivers based off the fact that they took 2 tight ends. They didn't take any wide receivers. They haven't added another veteran guy. They clearly trust those guys. Rashad Bateman, fluid as a route runner, very solid hands. Not the surest hands in the world, but very solid hands, I would say. Did struggle with drops, it felt like at times. And also we heard a couple of drop stories from training or from mini camp. But I think he'll be able to correct those. Devin Duvernay, I mentioned the speed. All-Pro as a punt returner, Pro Bowler as a punt returner, but also as a wide receiver, good sideline awareness, is able to get open a lot. James Prochet, speaking of getting open, James Prochet, very prolific route runner, amazing hands from him, someone who I'm excited to see get a better opportunity, a bigger opportunity. And then Tyler Wallace, contested catch guy, only had 2 catches in his rookie season, but made some plays with those 2 catches. So those 4 players, even if a veteran is added, I don't feel like it's going to necessarily cut into those guys' workloads. But at this point, it does feel like 5 to me without the addition or without any addition, which they haven't made at this point. And then maybe it is 6 if they add a veteran and they get the 4 guys, the veteran and the undrafted player. But in my opinion, this team at all 3 positions, 4 if you include fullback, very pivotal to this offense. And I know next week, or if there's news, we won't do it. But whenever we talk about positional battles next, positional previews next, which will likely be next week. But offensive line, I think, is one of the most pivotal positions. It all starts up front, so we'll talk about them. But for quarterback, running back, fullback, wide receiver, tons of talent there. Hopefully the injury situation is a little better than it was last year in terms of Lamar Jackson's ending injury, Rashad Bateman missing the first 5 weeks, and obviously Dobbins and Edwards. But a lot of talent there. Very excited to see how it all pans out for them as training camp progresses and as the season comes here, which is, again, it's creeping up. It's creeping up for us. But that's all I have you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. When we get back in tomorrow, I'll be diving into more Ravens content. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and I will see you here tomorrow.